Stand Together is proudly sponsored by International Genetic Solutions Multi-Breed Genetic Evaluation. When we collaborate, you profit, achieve results, and build your future with powerful data and informed decisions.
Welcome to International Genetic Solutions Stand Together. I'm your host, Chip Kemp. The merits of hybrid vigor and breed complementarity in beef cattle genetics are well documented by decades of scientific research and real-world experience. But the use of hybrid bulls is a more modern phenomenon as more producers look to balance the demand for ever-increasing carcass weights while still maintaining cow size and longevity to ensure profit. With me today to talk about reasons for these trends is well-known cattleman Don Schiefelbein of Schiefelbein Farms in Kimball, Minnesota. Don, thank you.
Good to be here, Chip.
Welcome, we appreciate it a bunch. So, certainly your family, your exploits personally across the business are well known. But just to remind maybe some of the viewers who've not paid quite as much attention, you've worked with a number of breed associations. Many of those associations represent continental influence and British influence. Your family's involved in multiple breeds, certainly well known for the Angus side of the business, but others as well.
Yep.
So would you take us back, some of the early days of the hybrid and composite cattle, you saw that up close and personal at a couple breed associations with the North American Limousin Foundation and with American Gelbvieh. Can you give us a sense of why did producers start talking about the concept of a composite or a hybrid in the initial stages?
Yeah, you know, it would be probably unfair to say it was a well planned out, well thought out way to get to hybrids. It really wasn't.
Yep.
What it really was, from my perspective, is a desperation to compete. And amazing what that kind of financial pressure of I've got to make a living will do, right?
Yep.
So what we had occurring from my viewpoint is the movement towards polled and black was a force that could not be reckoned with. You had to deal with how do we get our cattle polled and black. And as you know, when you go into the continentals, and especially the full-blood purebred continentals, black and polled,
They don't work.
well, they aren't known for their genetics, right? There are no full-blood polled blacks historically, right? So we had to figure out how do we compete with polled and black. And so the first step was, let's find outlier cattle. Let's find these crazy cattle that somehow got a gene that was polled and black, and let's run with them. And you can imagine, if all your criteria is they have to be polled and black, Chip, what do you think their contribution was genetically and all the rest of the traits?
Pretty meager.
It was a walking disaster, a walking disaster. You would go into the black polled Gelbviehs or the black polled Semitals that were purebred, and you would just say, they really aren't very good feeder cattle, let alone purebred seed stock animals, right? And so this disaster was looming. There were people just pushing, we gotta be black, we gotta be polled. And I'll always remember it. It was at a convention at the American Gelbvieh Association when this movement was at high pitch levels, right? And I stood in front of that convention and I said, we got to figure something out as a breed, okay? We will never be better at being Angus than Angus.
Amen.
Plain and simple, we aren't going to beat them at what they do best. So how do we use Angus to help us get to the black, polled, and guess what? And good. Mm-hmm. So we wanted black, polled, and good. And that's when this whole logic started to really come together. The hybrid system said, boy, if I just influence our great Gelbvieh or our great Semital genetics with the greatest of Angus genetics, we get them black, we get them polled, and we get them good.
Yeah. So as the industry then stepped back, and you talked very clearly, Don, about the profit motive for that, right?
Yeah.
We needed to be economically viable. So how long did it take the industry to start to come around to go, okay, those continental influence cattle, you're making sense to me now. You're starting to speak our language in the feedlot and at the packing plant.
Believe it or not, our greatest enemy to that was our own members. Just again, take you back when Gelbvieh and Simmental came in. Most of them came in with units of semen, right? And so producers spent their entire lifetime taking them from half-blood Continental to purebred. Then here's this young punk kid named Don Schiefelbein that's saying, by the way, we're going back. And they're like, I spent my whole life getting to this point. And they were poo-pooing it, pushing it back. It wasn't the commodity feeder cattle world pushing it back. They saw the value in it. It was our own breeders that said, can't do it, bad idea, let's not do it. Then as we talked just a moment ago, eventually, always, capitalism works, right? And so dollars generated that move, and people were like, as much as philosophically I hate, and I would use that word, I hate hybrid cattle. They sell, they pay our bills, they allow us to send our kids to college. And that's how it happened.
Ironic and interesting to hear that, because I've heard someone openly tell me once upon a time, as we were talking about hybrids, that's heresy. And I said, well, I appreciate your perspective, but recognize by the fact that you use that terminology means you've made your cows into a religion. I have a religion, thank you very much, and it isn't my cows. And so I appreciate you kind of describing just the hard, cold reality of the mind shift of the serious seed stock folks. It's still hard to make these transitions. So as we go forward then, it became incumbent upon us to be able to genetically evaluate these hybrids and these composite cattle equally as effectively as we do any straight bred line, right? Because without meaningful predictions, we're stuck. And so you were also intimately involved as we started to have those conversations. Talk to me about maybe the initial steps of genetic evaluation on composites and hybrids, and what was the feedback from membership and the commercial clientele?
Well, I think something that you pointed out is very key. When we began the hybrids, from my perspective at Gelbvieh, they were happening before us, but they were happening commercially. So they were basically undocumented, right mind, but really no genetic power behind them. There was no real true sense of what they were genetically. And we had to bring that together. And that was a difficult sense, because now you had to do a whole different kind of genetic evaluation. This whole within breed genetic evaluation, we were getting pretty good at it at that time. We weren't great, but we were getting pretty dang good at it, right? Now you're saying we're going to complicate this system and incorporate this breed or that breed. In our case, we just concentrated and said, we're just going to do Angus. And so we had to bring in what we called at that time prior values. I don't know if you're still using that term. We brought in prior values and basically said, we're going to weight this genetic prediction with what we know, with whatever accuracy is presented to us from their evaluation. So we kind of weighted it in, put those prior values in there, and really, in a matter of almost, once we had the technology, a light switch, we had pretty good genetic evaluations. And as you would have guessed, they kind of fell where you expected, Marbling went up on the Continentals, right? At that time, growth went down a little bit, calving ease improved, and they did all the things kind of directionally right from a commercial producer standpoint.
Well, and some of those, I think we're going to have a guest who's really going to love to pull on the thread that you just mentioned there in terms of evaluation and the competence of a modern evaluation, regardless of breed type or breed composition. But the other thing you mentioned there is just those trends in various traits, right? And we had a brief earlier conversation is when you look at the long-term genetic trends of all of these breed types, exactly what you were thinking of a few decades past, when you start making these structured hybrids, you start to take out the highs and lows of some of these traits, right? You all of a sudden start to be able to make animals that maybe are they the highest marbling? Maybe not. Are they high enough marbling with a little bit more cutability, maybe a little bit more manageable female fertility or longevity? Whatever the case might be, that in terms of ensuring overall enterprise profit, not just optimizing a given trait, you start to make it a little bit more viable from a business model. Most importantly for that cow-calf family, that crazy 35-year-old couple who's just bold enough to be in this business, we kind of balance out their revenue stream just a little cleaner.
And I would even take it a step further and say what it really allowed you to do is it allowed breeders within a breed to focus on what their breed does well. And to me, that was a huge one. So we were having this whole Gelbvieh breed, if you will, put all its selection pressure not just on black and poll, but now they're putting it on marbling, right?
Yep.
Well, boy, that's a tough lift, right? Mm-hmm. It would be so much easier just to pull in the marbling from a breed who does it well naturally, right? And from a hybrid standpoint, bring in the muscle and the growth from a breed that does it well. And so it allowed your breeders to focus on what they do well and keep their eye on the ball of making genetic improvement in reasonable steps on the traits that matter best to breed complementarity in the end.
I love that because as a producer, right, I heard a crop gentleman tell me one time, he's like, by the time I go through my family's operation, by the time Dad allowed me to start making decisions until the time when I'd like to give the next generation an opportunity to make decisions, I might have 40 crops.
Exactly.
Right? I get 40 swings at this. And so I certainly appreciate those folks that within a given breed type say, I want to move this breed for this trait. That's phenomenal, right? That's a wonderful thing. But on the other hand, sometimes the answer is right over there, and you can either spend the next 30 years trying to implement something and spend your entire life and still only get that far, or you can take a deep breath and swallow and go, if I incorporate that, I get there next year, my customers win, I win, and from a fulfillment standpoint in our own family operation, I set that next generation up just a lot faster than I was ever going to do otherwise.
Absolutely well said. The term I used to present to my membership on was dance with the one that brung you.
Yep.
You know, if you look at the characteristics of whatever breed you're going to do, if it doesn't carry those strengths of that breed, should that have been the breed you picked? And should that be the effort you're placing? So dance with the one that brung you. And to me, hybrids allows that focus on do what you do so well and work on it. And remember, using your example of how many years it takes, this was pre-genomics, right?
Yeah.
And so we didn't have a lot of time, right? And so if you spent a lot of wasted energy chasing a trait that was going to be hard to move the needle, 2% or 3%, you've wasted 2 generations of not moving that needle, right?
Yep.
And so really the thing just makes sense from an overall just strategy standpoint.
So making this very personal, Schiefelbein Farms, to call it a diversified ag operation is almost seems a little bit dismissive to the overall operation because you all are pretty serious on a whole host of different enterprises. And again, from the outside looking in, it certainly seems is that whatever enterprise you're vested in, it's extraordinarily intentional, it's very thoughtful, and as data-driven as that particular genre allows you to be. Is that fair?
That's fair. Yeah, that's fair.
And so, from the beef side of that, including the seed stock, but you also have commercial, you're involved in the feedlot, which means you get a lot of feedback from packers. Blending and talking about this line now where the packer wants a 1,600, 1,700 pound live animal, right? It's what they want.
Yep.
And we all know if we make females of similar ilk, we're in a spot, right?
Yep.
Our banker's going to be calling us pretty quick to pay the bills.
Yep.
And so, do you think hybrids, do they allow us to thread that needle any differently than maybe just straight purebred operations in and of themselves? Talking about at the commercial level, right?
Yep.
Where maybe we can keep cow size under control, but still reach out and make calves. You can optimize the market on the terminal end.
That's 100% correct. And in fact, remember, the real value of a lot of these hybrids are those longevity and fertility, right? But the reality is it's hard to put a number on them. What brought it front and center to our operation is we do a calf buyback program. So we sell our genetics, buy them back, feed them out, and see how we've done, right? And remember, this isn't just theory, this is real dollars, right? So you win and lose based on real dollars.
Yep.
And when people are winning and losing based on real dollars, change happens sooner. okay?
Yep.
So we got into that reality and we started feeding these high percentage, let's say Angus cattle, right? What you find out is that 1,300 pound cow, let's say, you bring it into the feed yard, take that steer equivalent, fat deposition, yield grade 4, yield grade 5, as a stopping factor on how heavy those calves can be. They'll probably reach that 1,300, but they certainly won't get to the 1,500. All of a sudden you just induce, and this is what I've said for many, many years, all it takes is about a 25% continental, and your window of marketing ability widens out from, it's not 1,300 anymore, now you can take them to 16, maybe even 1,700 pounds. You do that math on a break-even standpoint, and guys, it's not close. It becomes game over financially on what the answer ought to be.
So, and I think, and you combine that with some factors outside of anybody's control in recent years, I would say like the Finney County fire certainly even accentuated the packers' awareness of some of those things, right? As they were trying to manage some of those relationships, we were extending cattle on feed for longer, and I think that really got exposed
Absolutely.
in that era. And I love what you're talking about in terms of getting actual data, right? I think we're told test everything and keep what is good.
Yep.
And I love to hear that you all are doing that heavy lifting for your folks on the inside.
And I will add, everything we market is sold on a value-added grid. So you see in real terms, winners, losers, ones that are just carrying water.
Yeah. So for those of us involved in the genetic evaluation business, it's incumbent upon us to, yes, serve you as a seed stock producer, but more importantly, frankly, to serve your commercial clientele in the business, right?
Yep.
You're the conduit to them. Are there areas that you see from those of us on our side that we could do better? Maybe there are traits or opportunities we should continue to pursue, because you wear different hats at this table. You've been on our side,
Yep.
and now you live it on the other side. What do we need to step up to help?
If I were to be futuristic to the Simmental breed or a Continental breed, and I think it'll come, this thing kind of came full circle is what I would say. And I thought it would occur back when we started going to hybrids, but you need a population of producers that do a really good job of producing purebred Simmental and Gelbvieh cattle. And that population is still incredibly critical as you improve those hybrid populations. As we go in there and we create a lot of hybrids ourselves using our best Angus cows with the best purebred Simmental we can get and produce those F1 hybrids for our customers. The population of finding that purebred Simmental bull that does everything we want is becoming increasingly difficult, because people are taking the easier road of just saying, I'm just going to produce the hybrids, because it is easier.
Yeah, sure.
It's easy. You can fix things way quicker, way more effectively, but don't lose sight of the ball that seed stock, that parent generation of seed stock, is very important to make sure it's created right. And I think the return on investment for those that do that right is going to be through the roof in the future.
And I love that you point out something that I think sometimes there's this threat when we talk about hybrids. As you mentioned a little bit ago, as you were talking percentages, at the commercial level, it is a rare operation, that needs to be a straight bred operation at the commercial level. And there are very unique circumstances that would consider warranting that. So in lieu of that, we need to talk about their utilization of hybridization, and to the extent that we can augment that and make it easy and simple for them to implement is perfect. But for those who feel threatened by the concept of hybridization, it actually begets what you just said. Quality strains of cattle, purebred cattle, become even more vital.
100%.
More vital.
100%.
Because we're going to infuse the absolute best of the best to pull this off. Because if we fail at that level, the whole model kind of melts underneath itself. And so, and you combine that with the fact that nucleus breeders, which are probably always a smaller percentage of a population than the population likes to recognize itself, those folks who are really kind of creating the new seed stock, we need them vested in making these purebred lines to keep us viable in this hybrid model. So
That's exactly the truth. So it should not be a threat to purebred guys. It should be a huge opportunity, because if you do purebreds well, you will be well compensated, because they are the basis of making hybrids well. So I don't run from it. I strengthen it and say that's where it needs to be, say, focused.
Last question for you. Smidgen off topic, but it still kind of weaves all of these things into one piece. I have a colleague who often reminds me that clarity is kind. When my customer tells me their expectations, even if I don't like them, that's all I can ask from them, right? And so there'll be some folks watching this interview who lament the fact that carcass weights are what they are. Yep. They might say, I just don't like that, Don. Yep. And I might flip the script and say, I actually genuinely appreciate the packer is making it very clear that this is the kind of animal I will pay you a premium for. Now, the flip side is it does make the cow hard. But the reality is, at least you know, now what are you going to do about it? So I don't know if you have any thoughts on that clarity issue of, we know at present what the industry is expecting of us. How you're going to get there is completely up to an individual business.
I think you, first of all, you're set your whining and your wishes aside, and you go back to the fundamental rule of business, and that is those that write the checks write the rules. Yep. Plain and simple.
Done.
Those that write the checks write the rules. In our case, the feeders are wanting to get that better break even that we talked about earlier, because the packers are writing them a check based on a larger animal. So to try and run away from reality where checks are telling you the signals is sheer just fantasy world, right? Yep. And there are some that will go on these social media things and lament about it and whine about it and complain about it. You got to live in reality 101, right? Yep. If you're going to make it in this world, it's reality 101, and those that write checks write rules. Pay attention to those that are writing the checks.
Don, again, thank you very much for taking your time. So very much appreciate it. Next, we continue this discussion with other industry experts to learn what's behind the rise of the hybrid. There's more after this.
All your work comes down to this. Before you market calves, choose the International Genetic Solutions free feeder profit calculator to capture awareness and reduce risk. It's a simple, no-cost, transparent way for buyers and sellers to share at a glance information on your calves, all in dollars and cents language that anyone can understand. Know and build calf value before sale day. Choose the IGS Feeder Profit Calculator. IGS stands with you.
If you think about really IGS from a big picture standpoint, it's the value of collaboration, and beef breeds historically haven't always worked together so well or so much, but IGS kind of broke the mold on that, and being able to combine these data sets, more analytical power, better EPD predictions to use for all the breeds involved, IGS really facilitates that in an unprecedented way.
When you've got this many cattle in the evaluation, now with single-step genomics, and the money the seed stock producer spends on testing cattle for the 17, 18 traits we track, what you get is crossbreed cattle evaluations that the commercial cattleman can use when he's looking at EPD traits now. They're all on an equal basis on all these various breeds. So in the race to make the better kind of cattle, the science we're using today, I think it's on the forefront of getting really exciting.
Thanks for joining us as we discuss the rise of the hybrid and why more cattlemen are turning to hybrid and composite genetics to maximize profit. My next guest is Lane Giess, lead geneticist for the American Simmental Association. Welcome, Lane.
Thanks, Chip.
Appreciate you being here a bunch. Your connection with a continental population, your involvement in the IGS effort in a larger scope is well known and greatly appreciated. Don mentioned something in an earlier segment regarding how effective we've become at the association and eval level of finding and measuring genetic merit in hybrid and composite cattle. Yep. I've heard it said that some would argue, well, we can't do those hybrids from an eval standpoint at the same level as straight bred or purebred cattle. What are your thoughts on that?
The hybrid composite is really the premise behind all of the International Genetic Solutions genetic evaluation. The ability to connect breed populations to each other to effectively measure differences within contemporary group, within herds, across breeds, that's really how we can develop a genetic evaluation that services the commercial cattleman with a multi-breed EPD. Having hybrids as the foundation behind that genetic evaluation also helps showcase how important they are to the industry too. Not only can we use that information to better leverage more data in a genetic evaluation, we can also use hybrids to more effectively capture heterosis and service those commercial cattlemen. So I think when we consider hybrids, those data that we get from hybrids within breed populations, it's really the glue that keeps all of these genetic evaluations, or this genetic evaluation, operating.
So I think I hear you saying that the purebreds and the straightbred lines, which we evaluate very well. That's our, we're darn good at it. But the real magic, the glue as it were, are these hybrids, right?
Yes.
Because they give, not only do they tie all these together, as you say, but they also open us up to data that a straightbred population would never get.
Yeah.
So not only do you link populations together, but you magnify the amount of data you get to work with.
Yep, absolutely. We're in a genetic evaluation right now that has, I think we're just north of 23 million animals operating weekly. And if we consider within a single breed population, let's take simmental for example, we might have 5 million records over the past 40 years that we can use for our evaluation. But as soon as we open up the ability to leverage data from Red Angus and from Gelbvieh and from all of our breed partners that are members of IGS that are submitting data to this joint genetic evaluation, that number expands from 5 million to 23 million because we know that there are breeders and other breeds that are using other continental or British breeds to make a composite, and once we can make that connection from continental to a British, that just opens up the door to so much more records, so many more data points, and what that results in is a genetic evaluation with improved with prediction accuracy. So our EPDs are more informative and more accurate on younger animals.
So could you help us then appreciate from a commercial producer standpoint, when they hear over and over that it's just a given that they need to have this infusion of continental with British genetics, and in many cases that's continental and British and Brahman or heat tolerant genetics at some point. So why? What is the benefit for that commercial producer of infusing those composite animals, those hybrid animals on their farm or ranch?
Sure. The real benefit there is you're complementing breeds. We know that different breeds have different strengths, and continentals perform differently than British in a number of traits. And really where that comes into play are the lowly heritable traits. So traditionally what we see is the traits that are more lowly heritable or more directly influenced by an animal's environment, really that's where you see the most heterosis. So for traits like female fertility, right? If you want to improve fertility in your cow herds, the fastest and most economical way of doing that is to crossbreed.
I think what I heard you say there, or I think the way I would interpret that is that while we're chasing differentials in terminal merit, which are fairly highly heritable in the grand scheme of things, the real magic to staying in business as a cow operator is controlling some of the maternal aspects as well. And we need every tool in our toolbox, and heterosis is a massive opportunity for us there to ensure cow fertility, longevity, maybe control cow costs, those sort of things. Did I hear that correctly?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, the heterosis piece really is the most economical way to capture improvement in those lowly heritable traits.
So that would certainly be the genre of maternal heterosis, right? And we talk about direct heterosis and what it would do on more of the terminal traits of the calves. But the version of heterosis that strikes me that we rarely talk about in our business, and I think is a particular strength in a composite or a hybrid population, is paternal heterosis. Any thoughts on what paternal heterosis can do on a hybrid bull?
Yeah, that's
and it's a bit speculative, I know, because there's not a lot of data there.
A lot of the research that has happened over the last number of years has focused on direct heterosis and maternal heterosis, right? The crossbred female performs better, has higher fertility rates. But certainly, there's something to be said about paternal heterosis, as in, we can capture that direct heterosis through improvements in predictive traits.
So I'll just make it, kind of tangible. I think we hear frequently from commercial folks who have been sourcing a bull type of a particular straight breed for a long stretch of time. And all of a sudden they buy their first composite bull battery and they're like, I didn't have to go back to that bull buyer for 5 or 7 years. I've never had that because the bulls just don't quit. Any speculation as to why that might happen?
Certainly, I think anecdotally, we've noticed that those composite bulls definitely stick around longer. And I think when you consider that direct heterosis results in improvements in traits, you can start to make the connection there that a composite bull, he might stay sounder for longer. He might do a better job of getting cows bred. And keeps his weight, right? Those are all things that, for commercial cattlemen, that's important, right? And I think when you look at the composites, that's really where they excel in the eyes of a commercial cattleman.
So again, looking through that lens of the commercial cattle producer, then, the concept of, I think most would agree with you in what you said in terms of breed complementarity is real. We all know that there's no magic bullet. No one breed has a corner on profit on all traits, right? We also sometimes hear very convoluted or complicated schemes that to get to a crossbred animal. So there are a handful of approaches to implement crossbreeding or to implement hybridization. What are maybe some of the traditional approaches? And maybe it's one of those is ignoring hybridization. And then maybe take us all the way down to that composite bull that you mentioned and how that hybrid on hybrid approach can work for folks.
If we look across the North American beef industry, a large number of the cow herds is largely straight bred. And I think Donnie may have touched on this, but historically, crossbreeding was fairly challenging. It was pretty difficult to do effectively or do without experiencing troubles or wrecks or whatever. And the reason why a hybrid can fill a void there is that it makes crossbreeding easy, right? So if we look at the data, a crossbreeding system can range in complexity, and one of the more common ones is a maternal terminal crossbreeding system where you use a British continental cow and you put on a continental bull and you cull everything, right? Or all of the calves are strictly terminal, and then you influx replacement heifers by purchasing them, right? So that in and of itself has merit to a lot of commercial cattlemen, and it's a very effective system, and it is a way that you can capture maximum heterosis. And that is, and I think a lot more commercial cattlemen really should consider that sort of crossbreeding system, but it can make it challenging, right? Because if you need to be purchasing replacement females, you need to have a source for those F1s. A way that you can make it easier are hybrids, right? You may sacrifice a little bit of heterosis, but what you gain is the access to numerous breeds, complementarity across your system, and those hybrids are readily accessible, and you've got a ready-made product that are many cattlemen across, or seastock cattlemen across the country are providing for their customers. So a lot of the data that's supported by the use of hybrids is that we can capture maximum heterosis with at least 3 or 4 breeds in our crossbreeding system.
So your day job is you're a geneticist for a breed association, right? And I think many people are very appreciative of that. But the things you're talking about are not hypothetical to you or your family, right?
No.
You and your family are vested in the beef business, you're seed stock providers in your own right.
Yep.
And within your own program, over time, you started implementing a fair amount of hybridization within your seed stock. So any desire to kind of talk through the evolution philosophically to that? And then distinctly more important, what has that done for your customer base?
And just to give a little bit of background, our family was primarily purebred breeders of a English breed of cattle, and within that, we could occupy a specific space or a specific market within the beef industry. And our desire to grow and scale our business, it came to a point where we realized that we could only satisfy a certain number of the beef industry with our purebred base of cattle. And if we wanted to grow, if we wanted to grow our business and scale upward, we had to diversify and become a little bit more creative in our product that we produce for our customers. And so really that's where hybrids came in. And what we realized is that we don't need to be marketing so many purebreds. Really our hybrids are what allows us to grow our business, because there is a customer base within the beef industry that sees the need for more hybrids, or sees that a hybrid or a composite animal that mixes or blends continental and English together provides them a much more reliable and valuable product. And so we listened to our customers and we said, what can we provide to you that is going to help you operate and make you more successful? And really that English continental cross became really what our customers latched onto. And so over the last 10 years, we've started to really push the development of these composites within our system. And we've actually reduced the number of purebred animals in our herd because our composite line has really taken off. We've been able to triple the number of bulls that we sell in our annual sale just because we opened up the door to these composites, and our ability to reach a new audience has really helped our business grow and scale.
Last comment I'll make, and you can do with it as you wish, but you said something, you talked about the predictability of your customers' offspring. And to me, I think that's one of the that is the positive of hybridization that's benefited every species that's implemented it, right? Because as opposed to schemes that cause you to constantly vacillate from breed compositions that swing wildly from one end to the other, over time, your customers start to settle in to a composite percentage that can be static, so that not only their female herd, their cows are more uniform when they're making mating decisions, but when they're marketing feeder calves, we all know the quickest way to make money on marketing feeder calves is the bigger and the more uniform the lot.
Yes,
right?
Absolutely.
And so now all of a sudden we unify that group without having two different distinct subgroups within that population.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I just think, if we look back to early crossbreeding attempts in our industry, we may have complemented specific traits, but we did lead to a large variation within a lot of those groups. The nice thing about those hybrids really is that you can create a more uniform product, and those repeat customers that are using your genetics or genetics that complement what you're providing, really that's creating a product, like you said, that is incredibly uniform. And we're seeing results in feeder calf data that these hybrids are really producing economically for the feeder and for the packer. And I think, if the industry wants to move towards a more economical or more sustainable or more efficient system, these hybrids are really taking notice within the eyes of packers and feeders.
Yeah, that predictability it's required to build systems that have sustainability, right?
Yep.
And for us to plan out and be intentional in the future, that ability to predict is really key.
Yeah, so that's the merit behind a genetic evaluation that uses multi-breed data is when we can leverage so many more data points, our ability to be more predictive in evaluating the genetic merit of parent animals is so incredible. And really, the tools that we provide are meant to be commercially relevant and powerful tools.
Cool. Thank you, Lane. Thanks for sharing your insight. More on this topic continues with Dr. Matthew Cleveland of ABS Global. That's next.
All your work comes down to this. Before you market calves, choose the International Genetic Solutions free feeder profit calculator to capture awareness and reduce risk. It's a simple, no-cost, transparent way for buyers and sellers to share at a glance information on your calves, all in dollars and cents language that anyone can understand. Know and build calf value before sale day. Choose the IGS Feeder Profit Calculator. IGS stands with you.
The beauty of IGS is it makes commercial cattlemen and cattlewomen more powerful when they're making decisions, to get past all of the clutter and the minutia math, to make smarter, wiser, more profit-focused decisions.
and it can't be duplicated. We're a lot stronger working together than we are individually. We're getting a lot better genetic predictions by doing what we're doing, working together. And so that's really the power of IGS.
This episode of IGS Stand Together explores the rise of the hybrid. And with me today is an expert in the field of cattle genetics, including beef cattle hybrids, Dr. Matthew Cleveland of ABS Global. Matthew, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Chip.
Certainly from an outsider's perspective, looking in at your firm, you all value breed complementarity and the use of different lines of cattle, including numerous hybrids / composites, maybe more so than some. Could you give a sense of how that grew with time, maybe how that's changed in recent years, if it has, and maybe your take on that from a business perspective?
Yeah, I think we've certainly, I think when we look back at our history, I think we've always played in sort of the hybrid composite market. I think that's always been an important part of our business. And I think probably in past years, it was maybe more driven by the performance side of things. And so I would probably call that more complementarity, right? And so I think we saw a lot of success there, and our customers saw a lot of success there. I think in more recent years, we have really started to see more growth in that area. We definitely see some opportunity both on the terminal side and the maternal side as well, from a complementarity and a heterosis point of view. But certainly, I think there's probably a few factors that have gone into that. I think one of those factors is, we've seen a larger percentage of Angus in the commercial cow herd, and so with that, we've certainly seen the desire to, as producers are looking to, maybe create some complementarity or create some heterosis, they're looking at hybrids. Probably a bit more than they were in the past, and frankly, I think we've had a market at the commercial level for a hybrid in cases where it might have been a pure bed before, but really that's been shifted to the hybrid. And so from a commercial kind of commercial cow-calf point of view, we've certainly seen an increase in that demand for hybrids. So I think that's one thing that's been really driving it from our point of view. And then the other side is really the beef on dairy opportunity is we also see that as pretty significantly driving the hybrid market.
And so I'm certain your internal data would say something similar, but I know when I step back and look at IGS data, if we look at the trend lines for these economically relevant traits, right? If we look within a given breed type, a given straight bred population, there are going to be some areas where British cattle trend one way, Continentals another, and vice versa on another trait. And the beauty is where you see those voids between those lines, the hybrids just continue to fill in the voids and remove some of the extremes. With that said, however, I know in the initial stages, when you're talking to maybe a commercial beef client who's working with you, it can still be a little bit difficult sometimes, maybe not as much in 2024, but it wasn't that long ago where you had to sell them on this concept. How hard has that been? Or maybe today, maybe it's easier than it used to be, and that would be good to hear.
Yeah, I really do think it's easier, right? So we talk, forever we talk about crossbreeding, right? And what crossbreeding can do from a heterosis standpoint or a complementarity standpoint, right? We've always talked about that. I think where hybrids come in and where they've come in more recently is this idea that, well, I can gain some of those advantages of bringing those different breeds into the mix without maybe going so far as to think through, sort of a traditional crossbreeding approach, right? And so it's sort of given our customers a way to kind of dip their toe in the water, if you will, of bringing those traits, from the different breeds to bear without having to sort of jump all the way in. And so I think we are seeing a lot more uptake in that area. I think we're seeing a lot more interest in that area, and the conversation is certainly not as difficult as it might have been in years past.
Don Schiefelbein and I in an earlier conversation discussed how much this can speed up an individual family's enterprise when they're looking at within a given population, whether they're a commercial breeder or a seed stock operator, if they want to improve a certain trait, if they're married to a narrow population, they could spend the bulk of a lifetime trying to make that kind of progress, right? Whereas you're kind of alluding to that willing to maybe consider dipping that toe somewhere else, might be able to make that transition, within a year or two and allow you to go on to focus on to other profitable endeavors.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we look at purebreds in the United States, and we look at the genetic evaluations and how we've been able to drive genetic progress, like there's no doubt we've been able to really drive that progress. But I've always been a huge fan of the idea of a hybrid or a composite, right? Because I want to take the best pieces from what's available and create something that drives progress within a particular customer's herd, right? Like that gets me excited, right? And so I think that's absolutely the case, right? It enables you to put those pieces together that really allow you to make much quicker progress than, as you say, than sort of having that maybe a more narrow genetic base, if you will.
And you alluded to this a moment ago, and we don't have to go too far down it unless there's some things you want to pull on. But the fact that now, in the modern era, you can use the heterotic benefits and the complementarity benefits on the terminal traits that we've always talked about.
Yeah.
But when we're wanting a 1,700-pound steer, right?
Yeah.
Using those same tools to help us balance in that same program females that can last,
yeah.
right? This has become more important than ever that we accept some of these opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when we talk about, we obviously, we're a genetics company, right? So we want to talk about genetic improvement. But what I like to talk about is the fact that, genetic improvement has to come with something else, right? Genetic improvement or let's say the decision to AI and what genetics you use in that decision to AI, that's just your first step, right? At the end of the day, it's also about what's my breeding program or my mating program design look like, right? And that's incredibly critical. And so we talk about it as making matings with intent, right? So I need to be, as a producer, I need to be very clear about, I need to make these matings for this purpose, and I need to make these other matings for a different purpose. And that, to me, is when you really start to supercharge this thing, right? Because I can make genetic improvement all day long for, let's say, for the terminal traits, right? And we know we'll see the lines continue to go up. But what the commercial producer needs or the seed stock producer needs is they need to put those pieces together in the right way so that their replacements are coming from the right genetics and their terminal calves are coming from the right genetics, right? And that, to me, is where we start to see this ability to reach the genetic potential that we've created. And so we think that's really important.
Love you said that because business model and intent should always precede the next semen buy, right?
Absolutely.
Or the next bull buy.
Yeah, absolutely.
And frankly, we're all guilty of it. We're all guilty. So there's not me looking at anybody else out there. I can look at myself. Is that we get so excited about moving a given trait, we just simply forget, or frankly, at times I think we want to ignore because the business is more complicated than maybe it was 20 or 30 years ago. But all of us are in business to predominantly ensure that next generation has a legitimate chance to stay on that piece of dirt.
Absolutely.
And make a living, right?
Absolutely.
And we're going to have to make these tough decisions if we're going to do that.
And that's a key part of sustainability, right?
Yes.
Ensuring that the next generation can continue to operate in a profitable manner, right?
Yep.
100%. And I think, to that point, Chip, I think it's the technologies and the innovation that are allowing us, and I think that's why it was harder in days past, right? But now we've got technologies and innovation that allow us to make those changes and allow us to do things differently and frankly in a smarter way. Like let me list a couple, right? So first of all, the multi-breed genomic evaluation, right? That's been huge. And I think that's one of the things that we would point to and say what's driven the uptake of hybrids, from our customer base is, there's a much higher belief, let's say, in how an animal is going to perform genetically today than there might have been in the past because we've developed these multi-breed evaluations with genomics that give you a better idea of what that animal is going to be, right? Then you combine those sorts of things with sex male semen and sex female semen and breeding program design, and all of a sudden, like you're running really, really fast, right? And so I think we're sort of at this point in time where those pieces are starting to come together and coalesce, and it's allowing us to really do things we couldn't do 20 years ago.
Yeah, you're right. It's a convergence of so many things. And when we look at practically, just from a day-to-day standpoint, your own bull lineup, right? I look forward to the day when, well, as you alluded to, these genetic evaluations that allow us to compare across populations or add mixtures of different breed types. Yeah. How liberating will it be for the commercial clientele one day when they can go to page 5 of the sale catalog and those genetic predictions are directly comparable to the bull on page 75 or 43, so that they too can have some of those same things. That's maybe a what if thing down in the road a little bit, but I think those are the kind of steps that come next as extensions of some of the things that you mentioned. So when you look at your own bull lineup, has that breed makeup, that mixture changed, twisted over recent years, and if so, how?
Yeah, I think it has, right? I think we've gone from cases where we probably would have been more predominantly purebred, and let's just say it, right, a Simmental. I think we've gone from cases where we might have been marketing more purebred Simmentals to a case where the hybrid, the Sim Angus, for example, is a better option for a lot of our customers. And what we find is it's to tap the commercial market, that's what our customers are looking for. And again, because they can feel that confidence in the genetic evaluation and they know what they're going to get, they're feeling much more confident with that. And so we, over time, we've absolutely seen a shift in our lineup to more of those hybrid bulls. And frankly, when we're out there looking at the best bulls in the industry, we're looking for a lot of hybrid bulls. At the same time, we've also, I think as you're aware, we've developed our own genetic program, and again, that's a hybrid program because we, as I said before, I feel very strongly about breed complementarity, and so we've built our hybrid program to really focus on the traits that we believe are necessary, where we can drive progress in terminal profitability, and so we use a hybrid to do that. And so from our main lineup point of view, we've started to shift towards hybrids, and then from our own internal program, we started with hybrids from the very beginning.
And it would seem to only make sense in terms of that logical progression, because some of those, again, we're going to speak mostly to the commercial folks. Obviously, we know the seed stock folks are the conduit to them, but our job is to most importantly function on the commercial level. And so some of those folks who had been using that purebred Continental of choice, that Simmental that you mentioned on maybe their Angus herd, well, then they were making half-blood daughters. And it only stood to reason at some point then, if they want a manageable, maintainable system, and they've got a cow herd now that's maybe become a 50-50-ish kind of deal, that hybrid just seemed like the logical extension, right? Because now they've got uniformity of females that they're making, uniformity of calf crops that they're selling, and oh, by the way, it's simple.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah, it's got to be simple, right? At the end of the day, when we look at the average size of our commercial producers, right? Could we put in a kind of rotational crossbreeding system? Sure, we could do that, but that's challenging. That's complex, right? And the hybrid gives us that option, right? And again, it also gives us that option to add, for kind of producers who maybe aren't ready to jump right in, as I said before, gives us that option to add a percentage, right? That allows them, but again, in an easy way, right? It's not a complex thing to do.
So you referenced some of the serious technologies that have both brought us to where we're at, and some of them we're starting to push the envelope in another direction. One that's certainly not new, but you all are on the forefront of, the sex semen technology. We can talk about female sex semen all day long, and that makes sense to people. The area that strikes me is the male sex semen has become clearly a focus product for the beef on dairy space. Sure. And so I'd like to hear your thoughts on that, but then follow that with, why does it seem to be a slightly slower adoption for the commercial beef business, where we too could really benefit from some direct beef or some direct male semen in that sector?
No, 100%, and we're seeing a little bit of uptake, but you're right, it hasn't sort of caught on. But again, when we come back to this idea of matings with intent, right, it seems entirely logical, right, that you would use female sex semen to create your replacements, and that depending on your production system and your the beef supply chain, that you would use male sex semen on the other females, and it gives you the divergence of the things that you need that ultimately optimizes your profitability, right? Again, I think we're seeing a few customers have sort of started to think about that, and there's a little bit of uptake. I would have to believe that as we continue to talk about optimizing mating systems, I would have to believe that the use of male sex semen in with commercial beef producers is going to grow.
Are there any other technologies that you're comfortable in a position to talk about that are out there that are kind of coming to your attention, or maybe they're well formulated, maybe they're still a little bit in the ether, that you see coming at us?
Yeah, I think there are a number of things out there. I think one of the places that we're focused is around, when we look at a terminal production system, how do we improve health and welfare and well-being of animals, right? And I think there are going to be some opportunities in the future to really dial it in, right? We as an industry have looked at health traits, for example, for many, many years. But they're very challenging, right? They're very challenging to even measure or even define, much less make improvement. I think with some of the technologies that we're contemplating and others are contemplating, I think we'll start to see some advancement and some progress in that area.
Yep. I would say from an IGS standpoint, we'd say similar things. The excitement of the availability of both the phenotypes and the genotypes and the other tools to look at the heart issue, BRD, livers, lungs, whatever the case. That area that's been a black box that we like to talk about, maybe over the next 5 to 10 years we can really start to unlock that one a little bit more thoroughly.
Yeah, I would agree. I think there's two components to that, right? I think the phenotyping is set to get better, right? So how do we phenotype today? Well, we look at an animal and we write some stuff down, right? But I think there are a number of technologies using computer vision, using artificial intelligence, I think that are going to allow us to more precisely define a phenotype, which will allow us to actually do something with that information. And then on the flip side, we continue to see progress in genomics. We continue to see, work in. Well, I'd like it to get a lot cheaper, but we certainly see approaches to using low-pass sequencing and those sorts of things that when we combine lots of genotyping with lots of phenotyping, I think that's when we start to truly make progress.
Yeah, amen to that. So taking that concept of the stuff that's right on the cusp, right?
Yeah.
And tying that with another focus that I know that you have a lot on your plate, or some of the societal issues, but more through a lens of sustainability and those sort of things. Taking this back pragmatically to the hybrid or the composite, how do you think they fit in to a large picture of enhanced sustainability? Most importantly, I would speak to that in the way of, that optimization of economics and biology. There are some other pieces we'll let other folks figure out.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, the way I view sustainability is it's doing more with less, right? And I mean, I think it's that simple, and I think it's a concept that we in the beef industry embrace wholeheartedly, right? I don't think there's anything different. I think where the hybrid fits into that is really it's an optimization problem, right? It says, we'll just focus on the terminal side of things for the moment. Is I want to optimize the efficiency of the system from an animal from birth till the animal's harvested, right? And I think the way we need to do that is we need to drive genetic progress very quickly for the traits that are economically relevant to that part of the supply chain. And I think what the hybrid brings is again that breed complementarity, that opportunity to put those traits together in a less complex way for the producer that also helps us optimize the value of that animal across the supply chain, right? And we can talk a lot about sustainability, but really at the end of the day, what's sustainable is what's most profitable. And what's going to last from generation to generation. And so I think that's where we need to focus. And then we have to focus on telling the story.
So some of the viewers, they have this morbid curiosity. They want me to ask this question and they may not want to know the answer. How many of the industry partners that you work with are asking ABS Global about the sustainability piece? How many of them are saying, where are you at on this? We need you to work on this. How frequent does it come up in those sort of relationships?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, right? So I talk to stakeholders across the industry, right? From the ranch all the way to retail, right? And what I can tell you is, as you get further along the supply chain, we talk about that every single day, right? So if I'm talking to a retailer, going to a conversation with a retailer, first thing they want to ask me is about sustainability, and so. I hear less about it probably at the ranch level, right? Now we're heavily involved in the U.S. Roundtable for Sustainable Beef, and so that there's a bit of bias there because the folks that the producers who belong to that organization are already sort of bought into the idea of sustainability. But kind of the way I look at it is, it is really incumbent upon us to continue, to create a situation or a scenario where we have the social license to continue to produce beef, right? We know that there are lots of forces from outside the industry that kind of continually push on the industry and continue to point to beef production as being harmful, right? And so really it's incumbent upon us to really tell the story and to, again, keep that social license to produce beef. And I absolutely am optimistic about that, right?
Yeah.
And so wherever you sit in the sustainability, if you hear if you're a producer and you hear the word sustainability, however that makes you feel, at the end of the day, the supply chain is demanding it, and so we have to deliver it. And again, I think we are well positioned to do that.
Yeah, and to wrap up for us, you actually echoed something. I was sitting at the same table with Dr. Worth from the Round Table not real long ago, and she essentially said something that I found very logical and very comforting for the viewers, as she stated that genetics were and are the original sustainability tool.
Yeah.
Let's use the tool that we have in front of us.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we like to say that genetics is the foundation for a more sustainable food supply, and we believe that wholeheartedly. And I think where our challenge sits today is we have to be able to demonstrate that across the entire supply chain, right? And not just within the supply chain, but with all supply chain stakeholders, which includes a number of groups that sort of sit outside the supply chain that are looking at what we do as beef producers. And so, we have some work to do, but again, we have a great story, and it's not even a story. We have a great system, and we can demonstrate that year on year and generation on generation, we are more sustainable than we were in the previous generation.
Totally agree. We needn't shy away from these candid conversations,
right,
as long as we're rational and we think through this in the fashion that you described. I think we have a very healthy story that anybody can, any honest actor can buy into.
Yeah, absolutely.
Dr. Cleveland, thank you for joining us here at this thought-provoking discussion today. If folks would like to learn more, we encourage you to visit us at internationalgeneticsolutions.com. We've come together, have put together just this massive collaborative effort with approaching 20 million head of cattle to provide the most scientifically credible, the most cost-effective, the quickest, multi-breed, directly comparable genetic evaluation on the planet.
So now, instead of benefiting from only data, for instance, collected by Simmental breeders, those same Simmental breeders now benefit from data collected by Red Angus breeders, or from Limousin breeders, or Gelbvieh breeders, and the list goes on.